Welcome to Authored by Us, a podcast celebrating children's books about characters of color or of different cultural experiences, and the authors who bring these diverse works to life. Each week, we invite you to join us as we turn the pages of these bookshelf gems and hear from their creators who understand that stories of diverse experience truly come to life when authored by us. Here's your host, Zenzi Hodge.
Greetings and welcome back, listeners. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Authored by Us. Today, we are joined by not one, but two authors, and they are Portia Smith and Michael Johnson, and they are the authors of the book, The Adventures of Max and Levi, the Alpha League book series. Welcome to the show, Portia and Mike.
Hi.
Hey, everybody, and thanks for having us.
We are so glad to have you here. So, as I said, we have two authors, and we've never had this on the show before. So this is a new thing. But since this book is about Max and Levi, it makes sense that there are, in fact, two authors of the book. So tell us how this collaboration between Portia and Michael came to be.
Well, actually, we're from the same area. We're both from Fort Valley, Georgia, Peach County. And my cousin is actually his best friend. So my cousin, she introduced me to Mike last year, I think, at the beginning of last year.
Yes, pretty much like she said, we were introduced by my best friend, which is her cousin, although I already knew her anyway. But she was familiar with me writing music, and she was like, well, if you can write songs, I'm sure you can write a book. She had just written a book. So I was like, I can't write a book. But she convinced me, and I wrote a book.
Well, Mike, he's actually a really great writer, and he's very smart. So once I saw, his music and things like that, I was really interested in working with him.
We've had conversations about the fact that music is a great way to teach children how to read, because whether you listen to rap and you think about the words and it's poetry that's set to music, or if you're in church and you're singing a hymn, that teaches syllables. So there's a lot about music as it comes to reading and to writing. So it seems like a natural pairing.
Absolutely.
I used to tell people, before you knew your alphabets, you knew the song. Before you realized that was your alphabet, you knew the song first.
Right.
That's true. That's why some adults, even if you have to ask them what comes after M, they're going to sing the song to figure out what's next.
I'm one of them.
So when I first saw your title, two words grabbed me. The first was adventure and the next was series, because that said to me that there was going to be some excitement and that there was more than one book coming. So tell us about the book, The Adventures of Max and Levi.
Well, as you stated, it's an adventure. It's really about two kids starting new school, or one starting a new school, and he's weary of bullies. And the other kid was kind of perceived as a bully, but he had been bullied in his own right. And as far as the Alpha League, one of the guys he's like a child superhero in a coalition of other kid superheroes. And when we started, we were going to focus really on the Alpha League, but those two characters kind of stood out and formed its own story. So it's kind of forced us to do another installment.
Right. And I'm heavy into Marvel and DC Comics. So this was just too exciting for me. I love superhero anything. And so writing the book, it just kind of flew naturally. And like he said, we were just going to write one book together. But then we had so much writing going on in it. We was like, okay, we can't just do just one book. We got to write more. So it turned into a series of kids. And we'll have more kids joining the series as we continue to write more. But we wanted to introduce it with Levi because he's going to be kind of like the main character that joins everyone together in the group. But we're excited to start, with this first book, and then we'll start writing with our next book as we go along.
I'm so glad you mentioned Marvel because that's exactly what I thought. So as I was reading the book, to me, it ended like a Marvel movie and I was looking for something else. And I started to realize this is an origin story. Oh, something has to come after. Mm-hmm. And so I'm swiping left, and it just stops. And I'm like, how can it stop? There has to be more at the end of the story. So I know we're going to hear about more things to happen with Max and Levi.
Mm-hmm. And that's exactly how we thought about it and how we wanted to end it, sort of like a cliffhanger in a sense, to have the audience wanting to read more and to want to see what happens with the next book.
I'm trying to be the Stan Lee of children's book series.
You know, I have a 13-year-old son, and he is very much into comics, or he calls them graphic novels, but he really enjoys reading. And I shared with one of our other authors that I read what he reads. So if he's reading a graphic novel, I'm going to read a graphic novel. We watch Marvel movies together. And I think that's an important point of connection. Whatever interests a child. You can't say that a child is not a reader. You just haven't found what interests that child. And so if that child wants to read about Marvel, or if they want to read a cookbook, that's how you introduce them to the space of reading.
I agree with the reading, and especially with the children real young. I started as early as I can remember. I was reading Dr. Seuss, and I tell people today, Dr. Seuss taught me how to rap. And like my baby, she's 5 and she's reading on a first grade level. Third grade level. I'm sorry.
Oh, so wow.
She loves to read. Yeah. And the teachers asked her who taught her how to read so well. She said, "My daddy."
I love the writing in the book. And even though Max is in the first grade, his mom talks to him like he is a little adult. She doesn't curb her words or her vocabulary when she's talking to him. And I laughed out when she was talking about affirmations and he said accusations because he heard a word that he didn't understand and he was trying to make sense of it. Why did you choose to write using words that were perhaps above the grade level for the characters, but so appropriate for the story that you were telling?
Well, we really wanted to kind of introduce some new things to the kids, especially with the affirmations. I'm pretty big with affirmations, and in my previous book, I Know Who I Am, it's all about affirmation. So we wanted to kind of tie that in with this book and really all of the books that we're planning to do in the future. So using that, we wanted to kind of try to teach kids what that was, but do it in a creative way. So that's how that kind of came along with the affirmations.
When we were writing, we were saying like Levi had a speech impediment. I was like, well, these kids gonna know what an impediment is? I was like, you know what, they're gonna learn today. I didn't want to per se dumb it down to make it sound more catchy, but at the same time, I still wanted to make it where they can relate to it, they can understand what's going on. But I mean, it's like they used to tell us when we was in school, sound it out. You can figure it out.
Michael, you brought up something really important, the fact that Max had a speech impediment. And you're writing a book that a child is going to read or a parent is going to read. And so you didn't have to include that because it's not something that you're going to hear in the book, but you were very intentional about bringing in the fact that not every child speaks the same or learns in the same way. Why did you decide to do that with this character in the book?
I think I did it. Well, I know I did it because I referenced like situations from my childhood and being in school and knowing why different kids get bullied for different reasons. And that was one of the reasons where people would pick on you if you couldn't get your words out properly.
And then when you have a president who has struggled with his own speech impediment and so forth. So I think it's important to share that so that a kid can see themselves in a book.
Yeah, I liked how you said that too, because my daughter, she has disabilities too, and she has speech therapy. Mm-hmm. So I like to incorporate different things into the books that show a diversity with kids too, not just how standard books are. I want to show different things that are going on with the kids' lives to let everyone feel inclusive in the book also.
It makes your readers feel that they are not alone. And when you see yourself, all of yourself in the pages of a book, it is affirming because you realize it's not just me. hey, this character is someone that looks like me or talks like me or has behaviors similar to mine?
It's funny you said that, especially about the children's book. Here I am, mid-30s, and I listen to a lot of what they call urban literature. And certain books, because I listen to audiobooks now, I rarely get a chance to sit down and actually read. But a lot of the characters, I start thinking like, oh man, he sounds like me, or he going through what I went through, or what I'm going through. So I definitely can agree with you on that.
So you also introduced some very real feelings and experiences that children have when they're going to school. And you did it in a very realistic way. You talked about anxiety and you talked about bullying. Why was this the focus of this book?
I think the bullying aspect came into play in my mind because I wasn't per se a bully, but I would check the kids that tried to bully the kids that couldn't stand up for themselves. And I was like, no, we ain't going to do that, because he's scared of you. So what point is that to bother him? And I said, I'm not scared of you. Come bother me. That rarely happened too, but I ain't trying to brag about it. so it really was a personal reference because I've actually experienced such things.
Well, I did have my few share of bullying when I was younger in elementary school, but it's so funny now when I think back and I talk to my sister, even though I've had some minor bullying experiences, but I was always the kid that stood up for my friends, especially my sister. I ain't like people to mess with my sister. So I feel like I was always kind of like Max, where I've been through that experience, but then at the same time, I was able to stand up for other people. I didn't I was very much an advocate for other people, and I still am to this day, with my friends and family and stuff like that, especially being a counselor and then want to introduce some of those things to kids too, to show them different strategies that you can use to actually help in bullying situations too.
You painted some very clear scenarios with bullies. And I looked at some of the kids and I'm like, wow, they are so mean, and as you're reading it, they are really mean. And these are actual scenarios when they were taking his lunch or they pushed him down. I'm like, can you guys just please be nice to Levi? He's a new kid. What message are you hoping that your young readers will take from reading this book, whether they're the student that's bullied or they're the student that's doing the bullying?
I just hope, people be more considerate of people's feelings. Because for one, you don't know what this child has to deal with outside of school. You don't know, his parents may have financial situations that make it where his shoes are dirty or his clothes are old, or reason why he's unkept. And like I said earlier, it's just things that I really experienced. And it didn't ever sit well with me.
It's funny to mention that too, because Mike and I vaguely had this conversation on I think it was on Instagram when I shared something with him, and this guy was saying even though he wasn't a victim in a certain situation, he was like, sometimes even though you're not a victim, you still have to stand up for others in a situation. So when I saw it, I showed it to Mike and I was like, I know this is a total different situation, but why does this make me think about the book? And it was just a great message for him to say that, although I'm not the one that's going through the experiences, I can still be the one that can stand up for that person and what they're going through, even though other people are kind of bullying him too. But I'm not going to be in that situation and be a bully towards him. I'm going to be the one that stands up and show that, to show that I'm his advocate. I can be a friend to that person.
I like how you both talk about how you can be an advocate and you can put an end to the bullying. Because as I read through the book, with the exception of the beginning with his mom and the neighbors, I didn't see any adults at the school. And so when Levi was going through his tribulations, I'm like, well, where are the adults? And so I didn't see a teacher. I didn't see a hall monitor. There was no one to come to his aid. But who came to his aid? It was Max. And by the end, there were the kids solving their problems.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you said that, because a lot of times in those type of situations, and I'm thinking back to when I was younger, a lot of times the teachers don't know what's going on, and the students may be afraid to talk to the teacher about it and tell them what's going on, and they may not see it, or they'll try to sneak and hide that I pushed him down or took his lunch and stuff like that. So a lot of times the teachers are unaware of what's going on in that situation. So in Levi, didn't speak up. And so it kind of took Max to use those affirmations that his mom had instilled into him to kind of build up that courage to stand up for him too in that instant.
It's funny. I'm thinking now. I wasn't thinking about it during the writing process, but how you were saying, like you'd seen no teachers, no hall monitors, principal. I don't know if we intentionally, well, on my behalf, I didn't intentionally put it in there like that. But it's so true. Like a lot of times the kids are left to fend for themselves, and you tell the teacher they do nothing, and you'll hear a certain set of kids like, "What do you do when the kid hits you? Tell the teacher." My mama didn't give me them affirmations. My mama said somebody hit you, you hit them back. Then you go tell the teacher. Those were my affirmations.
You're absolutely right.
I think we all got the same lesson.
I think it may be a cultural thing.
Yeah. I saw on social media where people were always saying we were all raised in the same household.
I think we sure are. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back with Portia and Michael.
Like what you hear so far? Make sure you never miss a show by clicking the subscribe button now. Authored by Us is made possible by listeners like you. We thank you for your support. Now back to the show.
So we're back with Michael Johnson and Portia Smith, talking with them about their book, The Adventures of Max and Levi. So something else I noticed in the book is that all of the characters in Max and Levi's first grade class, they were all boys. How did that happen?
I think it kind of just happened.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really think it was intentional.
Yeah, it wasn't intentional. I think it was on the illustrator's part, because we were talking about how they were in private school too, and the illustrator pretty much did. And I was like, Mike, well, do you think it's okay? And he was like, well, yeah, because a lot of bullying situations happen in private schools too. So we wanted to bring it from a different aspect also. So I think it was just more so it just kind of happened like he said.
Now that that's been established, I'll probably add a little small teaser. I'm gonna piggyback off that. Well, we're gonna piggyback off of that when we do the next installment, and you never know, it might be for the young ladies and might be an all girls school. We just have to wait and see.
Well, we're excited to find out what happens next. So tell us about Max and Levi and if they are inspired by anyone in your lives.
On my behalf, I put like a lot of the guys together. Like I grew up with a pretty much diverse crowd as far as personalities and backgrounds. And I kind of tied all the guys into one person or two people and just took different personalities along with a hint of mine and made a super character, I guess.
Yeah, because Mike pretty much developed Max, and I kind of developed Levi. So I think with Levi, I kind of developed him with my personality a little bit, and the things I like because I'm a computer nerd, and also I love superhero. I was kind of bullied and teased a little bit, so I kind of developed him from my personality too, and things that I've went through.
Did you plan on splitting a character per person, or did you assign it, or did that just naturally evolve?
It just kind of evolved, and we kind of pitched in with the other characters, but it was majority the way she explained it.
Mm-hmm.
So as I started the book, I realized it doesn't introduce us initially to Max and Levi in the first pages. It introduces us to their community because they're at a back to school picnic, and you introduce us to their neighbors. And I also saw at the end of the book that Max and Levi formed their own community at school. Why did you introduce this concept, I guess, of community through characters that we didn't see at any other point in the book after that?
I think we kind of wanted to show, like at the beginning, just basically like how in some communities I know here where I live, we have big back to school parties. I know since COVID, a lot of that haven't happened, but they're always having the big back to school bash. You see all the flyers around town. Everybody's like, okay, come and get all your school supplies, come and do this. And they're cooking and grilling. So it's kind of like a familiarity with the things that we're experiencing here too. At the end, I kind of wanted it to be more where with the situation that was going on, that the kids around them saw what was happening and all were happy and just cheering and excited to see them come together, and Levi saying, "Hi, I'm Levi," So I think that's where that came from.
Yeah, and not only that is, I think it was for me. I've met a lot of my friends that's from the same community because our town is like real small. But I met a lot of the people that I'm still friends with to this day in school, and a lot of the problems I had as far as bullying or whatnot were in school. It rarely happened outside of school.
So you mentioned that your illustrator kind of set up the fact that the school would be an all boys school. And so illustrations are extremely important and they give a lot of life to the words that you have crafted in your book. And your illustrations are so vivid. And it's not just the colors, but there are a lot of details that pop out. Like you can tell that Max, his hair is cut in a fade. And then there was a little girl with Afro puffs, I guess, in his kindergarten flashback. And they look like real Afro puffs. Like you could see that her mom had just kind of picked her hair out. So, how important was it for you to have this level of detail in portraying these characters and especially depicting certain nuances of being Black in your illustrations?
For me, it's very important. When I typically go out and look for an illustrator, I look for an illustrator who I say for myself knows how to really mimic or draw Black features really well, or some not really trying to speak bad of people's illustrations or anything like that, but some people I've seen, it seems like they don't really get it or may not really grasp it well with our hair and things like that. So that's one thing that I actually look for in illustrations for the books that I've done, and this book, and then I have another book coming too. So I've actually looked for people that can actually break that down and in a very detail with the hair. And I'll go back if I don't like it, or if I don't think it's, what I really want to portray in the book. I'll go back and say, no, well, can you do this a little bit more? Can you change this? And sometimes I'm wondering, like, am I getting on their nerves? But I'm very, very kind of strict or or detailed when it comes to things like that.
And the details are extremely important.
In my aspect, I look at it like it was a while before we had a Black Barbie. It was a while before we had Black cartoon characters, or it's really, we needed something for us that we can identify with. Like, yeah, that really looks like me. I understand
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's what we want to portray, because I feel like it's so underrepresented in the community, well, in books, period, and especially with heroic characters. So we wanted to do that, especially with the heroes too.
I agree. And Mike, your comment about having a Black Barbie, it's not enough to just have the same doll with chocolate skin, there's a little bit more to it. And having the right type of illustration to bring that out. Like I said, I can tell that Max had a fade. I mean, and it was very, very clear.
that. Yeah, I just think we have to do. Not, I'm not going to say a better job at representing us. We're going to have to take control of representing us.
Right. I love that.
Because a lot of times our narrative is being written by people that has no clue of what's really going on.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And that's why it's so important that we write stories about our experiences, because we are narrating what is going on in our lives and not handing it off to somebody else to do. So, Mike, this is your first book, correct?
Yes, it is.
So, tell us what it was like in this whole process. Share with us going from your writing journey to the publishing journey and now sharing the story. What has this been like for you?
It's been kind of weird. And the reason why I say it's been weird because I have I thrive in chaos. Organization gives me anxiety. And she would send me stuff. Well, I need this by this time. And 2 weeks later, I still needed that by that time. And I was like, oh man, I forgot. So it really was a challenge because I was like, man, I got to meet these deadlines. But realistically, at the writing part, my biggest thing was actually writing it. Like I had a whole half a story in my head, and I had to tell myself, well, you got it, but she can't see that, so you got to put it down for somebody to print it. And so once I really just came with that, I was like, you know what, let me go ahead and write. 'Cause I might write 3 whole paragraphs for the book in one setting instead of putting them down once I think of them. So I don't know, it's kind of weird.
And Portia, you're not new to writing. This is not your first book.
No.
So and you've also tackled the themes of affirmations and positivity and self-awareness. So
Mhm.
what was it that inspired you to write this particular book and at this time?
Well, my inspiration actually came from tragedy. My husband, he passed away suddenly, and well, a lot of people don't know this. So I'll put this out there first. This is actually my second husband to pass away. My first husband passed away when I was 22. He had lung cancer. And then my second husband passed away when I was 33. And he just suddenly went into cardiac arrest at night and he had a seizure and went into cardiac arrest while he was asleep. So for me, for that to happen suddenly, it was kind of like the rug being pulled from under me. And I went through a lot of depression. I went through a lot of anxiety, counseling, things like that. And affirmations, that was the thing that helped me. I started writing affirmations inside of my phone. I have a big section of notes in my phone. And I just started writing them. And on my way to work, when I was working in Atlanta, I would just sit there and repeat those affirmations to myself and try to boost myself up and try to kind of calm myself down too at the same time with my nerves. And I and then also with my daughter, I started noticing she would come home from school. She started school when she was 3 in early intervention program, and she would come home from school and she would say things like, "I'm so ugly. I'm too dark skinned. I'm this," and I'm like, "How you 3 and 4? Like, how are you coming home saying stuff like this?" So the affirmations really worked well for me. So I started having her repeat those affirmations too. And I would say, "Well, I'm beautiful." And I have her look in the mirror when she's saying things. And she would say, "I'm beautiful." I'll say, "I'm loved. I'm this and I'm that." So that's what kind of brought the affirmations for me, because when I saw that happening with her and also with me, I was like, well, other kids can probably benefit from this too. So that's really how the book developed. And then me wanting to start a company doing that with books that promoted those type of things with positive self-esteem and something that's going to build your confidence up and things like that. So that's pretty much where all of that came from.
We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back.
Hey, are you tired of walking down the greeting card aisle and not feeling represented? Well, Culture Greetings is the answer to that level of inclusivity. Visit culturegreetings.com, pick a greeting card with beautiful imagery of the culture and wonderful words that we use to connect and convey messages of love and thoughtfulness. Write your note on the inside of the card right there on the website, and we will mail it directly to your recipient from you, saving you a trip to the store. It's simple. Culture Greetings was created with you in mind. Visit culturegreetings.com.
You're listening to Authored by Us. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review so you never miss an episode. Now back to the show with your host, Zenzi Hodge.
So we're back with Mike and Portia. The Adventures of Max and Levi has not hit the shelves as yet. So listeners, you're getting not just an insight into the authors, you're getting a sneak peek into a book that's going to be hot off the press within the next couple of weeks. So Portia and Mike, tell us when do you anticipate your book being released, and where can our listeners find your book?
Well, it will be available on Amazon as early as next week. We're hoping for middle of next week for sure.
And listeners, as always, we'll have a link to their book in our podcast notes, and you can also find a link to their site on our Authored by Us bookshelf. So the pandemic has really changed how authors are now able to engage with their audiences, and we're not always able to do readings out to the public. So tell us how you're navigating around the pandemic. What are some of the things that you're doing to make sure that people learn about your book, and also where customers can find you?
We're having a book signing that's coming up on February 27th, and it's going to be from 11 to 5 p.m. And what we're doing is we're going to have a live reading with Black Parent Magazine, and it's going to be live on Instagram at 12 o'clock. So that's one thing that we're doing to hopefully, try to prepare for our book launch and get it out and tell people about our book. So we're kind of doing more Zoom things and more internet marketing and social media marketing.
And you mentioned social media. So where can we find you on social media?
You can find me at Portia's Portias underscore bookshelf. And we also have PSMJ underscore books.
As far as the company, what else we got? PSMJ Books at Gmail also. Anybody got any kind of inquiries or and Portia is teaching people how to write books, so y'all make sure y'all email her.
So you just kind of stuck that in there about PSMJ. Can you tell our listeners about your publishing company? Because you're not only an author and published, but you have a publishing company. So tell us a bit about that.
Well, with this book and the heroic side, it's actually an imprint under Imagine Me Creative Book Publishing. That's kind of like the parent company, but this is our baby together that we're running this company together as business partners. And so with PSMJ Books, we wanted to kind of focus on heroic side of things with the characters. We haven't really discussed if we wanted to bring in other authors, but that could be something that we do in the future. Especially how we're saying that we're kind of underrepresented in the area with superhero characters. So to bring in other authors that have similar ideas that kind of represent the same thing that we represent would actually probably be a good thing too. But that's something Mike and I would probably talk about.
So as you talk about possibly bringing in other authors, what do you think inspires the next generation of writers? So those are the coming after you.
Well, from the things that I've seen and people that I've talked to that are interested in writing books, for me, I've seen more people talk about diversity. They want to see themselves in the book. They want to teach their kids about experiences that they've been through and being able to overcome. And a lot of people love the books that are building self-esteem and self-confidence for their kids because teaching them that at an early age can be very beneficial for them when they become an adult too. So those are the type of things that I have seen personally.
I think when you show people that it is possible, that you can do it, it's more appealing. Like when she proposed the idea, I'm like, I can't write no book. Then I would think like, why can't I? I can do anything else I want to do. So if I want to write a book, I can write a book. But you just have to keep that mentality. And if you come to a stream, you find a way to build a bridge and you get over it.
I absolutely love that.
And as Mike said, I am under Imagine Me Creative Book Publishing. I am starting to take on new authors. So if anybody is interested in working with me, please hit me up. You can hit me up on social media or send me a message on my website also.
One of the questions we always ask our authors, because you are authors of a children's book, what was the book that had the most impact on you when you were a child?
Me, the whole Dr. Seuss catalog. I think Cat in the Hat, Green Eggs and Ham. It was one of the least popular ones. I think the man name was Marvin K. Mooney or something like that, but that was my favorite.
I was actually going to say the same thing. Those were most of the books I read were Dr. Seuss books. I would read the books about the princesses and those was it Tom and Dick and Jane, CJ
Yep.
Run. CJ. I love those books when I was little. I actually look for them now and try to find them for my daughter.
My mother may actually have copies on her shelf. I'll let you know.
Oh wow.
So before we wrap up, Mike, I think Portia snuck it in there that you're a musician and that was your gateway into writing. So how about you share with us a little bit of your musical talent as you talk about the book before we close out this episode?
All right. Let's see. I'm gonna try to have a little freestyle. Well, if I kind of stutter, don't charge it to my head and not my heart. Anyway, Max and Levi. It's a great adventure about two kids in their first grade teacher getting bullied, dealing with other problems. They come together to figure out how to solve them. Lunchroom drama, classroom play. They linked up in the playground one day. Max said, Levi, I tell you what you need. Become a member of this Alpha League. How about that?
So you heard it here first. Thank you so much. Oh, wow. Mike and Portia, it has been an absolute delight talking with both of you, hearing about your book, just hearing your personal stories. And then we get a little, lyrical styling in on the end. That is an excellent way to promote the book. I cannot wait for it to come out so that not only do I get a copy of it, but other kids get to pick up their copies of The Adventures of Max and Levi and learn about the Alpha League. And this is just an origin story, so we know there is more to come. So thank you so much for joining us on today's episode.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for having us.
So listeners, it's time for us to close the cover on another bookshelf gem. I want to thank Portia Smith and Michael Johnson for being here with us to talk about their book, The Adventures of Max and Levi, the Alpha League book series. We'd also like to thank this episode's sponsor, Culture Greetings. When you're looking for the perfect way to say thank you, happy birthday, or just to send well wishes, add a bit of culture to your greeting. To create your personalized greeting, visit their website at culturegreetings.com. And finally, this episode would not be possible without you, our wonderful audience. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Authored by Us. We look forward to you tuning in next week as we introduce a new author sharing their book. Until next time, happy reading.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of Authored by Us. Every author has a story to tell, and we enjoy bringing their stories to you each week. Whether you are listening as a young reader or are sharing this podcast with the young readers in your life, we are delighted to celebrate these stories inspired by diversity and shared in the voice of their authors. Follow us on social media at Authored by Us and subscribe to our podcast using your favorite podcast app. That way you never miss an episode. Have a gem on your bookshelf that we should have on ours? Visit us online at authoredbyus.com and let us know. Until next time, happy reading.